Hi, I'm Matt Shepard, and coming up on this edition of Shep, Shower, and Shave, closing the gap. We've got a championship defense among us, and moving on is the right thing to do. Shep, Shower, and Shave is brought to you by our friends at Northwestern Tech. Folks, help out our sponsors, all right? If you're looking to make a career change, if you want to get into the HVAC field, then there's only one place to go. It's Northwestern Tech, because HVAC is all they teach, and they've been doing it successfully for the last 38 years. They have flexible scheduling for you as you make your career shift, and you can check them out on their website, northwesterntech.edu, or call them today, 248-358-4006. Everybody eats pizza, don't you? Absolutely. I go to my kids, what pizza do you want? And I'm not kidding you when they tell me this. Hungry Howie's. They love it because they've got the flavored crust, right? It's really good. It's fast, but it's healthy. Families eat pizza at least once a week, so it's easy for you to get Hungry Howie's, and it's easier for you to use Hungry Howie's as part of your sports team or your school group as you try to fundraise a little bit. Go to doughraiser.com. That's D-O-U-G-H, razor.com, all one word, and you can find a way to raise lots of money for your organization. We're also brought to you by Nate Knopf Designs. See his work on Instagram or on Facebook. He designed the Shep, Shower, and Shave logo. You and I, as Lions fans, get tired of the NFL, what we would call kicking us around. Calvin Johnson in 2011 with the Chicago Bears, right? The KJ Wright play a few years ago, batting it out of the end zone. The unfortunate way Detroit lost to the Dallas Cowboys. Brandon Pettigrew was interfered with, and there was no call. And then you have Sunday against the Falcons. And let me premise this by saying I thought Atlanta was the better team. The Falcons, as defending NFC champions, are very impressive. The Falcons have a lot of weapons with Sanu and Jones and Hooper through the air, and then that double-headed monster in the backfield with Foreman and Coleman. Matt Ryan is the reigning MVP. Yeah, they're really good. I was surprised. I mean, you're looking at a team that only punted twice. Now, granted, they turned it over 3 times. Ryan threw 3 picks. 2 of them I don't believe were his fault. 2 of the 3 were deflections. But they're a really good football team. Teams, though, all they really want is an opportunity, especially in the NFL, an opportunity to win it. Give themselves a chance to win it. Look around the NFL, folks. And I mean this. Try to figure out who's really, really good and who's really, really bad. I've said this the Jaguars beat the snot out of the Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore's 2-0. They punked them 44-7. The Broncos, a week ago, opened up a proverbial can on the Dallas Cowboys. Then they go to Buffalo and they get beat by double digits. Can you figure that out? How does Chicago hand Pittsburgh their first loss of the year? How does Minnesota knock off the almighty Jameis Winston and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Winston had 3 picks. How do the Texans play with New England as tight as they did in Foxborough, right, where New England had lost to Kansas City, who's a good football team? How did the Jets claim their first win with a runaway over the Dolphins, thanks to Josh McCown? How did the Saints start 0-2, look awful, go into Carolina, pick off Cam Newton 3 times, and steamroll them by 21? How are the Seattle Seahawks 1-2? Can you figure that one out for me? I mean, these are the things that the NFL sells itself on, is the parity, the opportunities. Detroit had an opportunity. Detroit is closing the gap. They are not there yet, but they are closing the gap. All you ask yourself as a fan is my team getting better? And that's tough to answer week to week because of the fluctuating scores and situations that the NFL faces. And is my team giving itself a chance to win. A lot of people told me, I just want them to be competitive, Shep. I want to see how they fare against a team I greatly respect. You may not have respected the Arizona Cardinals, and you may not have respected the New York Giants, who are now 0-3, but just gave Philadelphia everything they could handle. Maybe you'll respect Arizona if they knock off the Cowboys. I don't know. But you wanted to see if they were competitive. You got competition. You got a team that was extremely competitive and very close, and some would argue won the football game. I don't think they looked like the better team, all in all. The defense, as I mentioned, 3 picks. They also gave up 151 yards rushing on the day. The offense, back to its paltry ways of rushing for just 71 yards. That's it. There are things in that game that give you great hope. Okay? A defense flying to the ball. A defense forcing turnovers. An offense that, when clicking, drives down the football field 89 yards for what we thought was the game-winning score. We'll get to more on that in a minute. There are things that greatly concern you. A mishap by Don Carey tackling the guy who made a fair catch signal. Eric Ebron, who was targeted 7 times, second most of any receiver. Third most on the team. Theo Riddick was second. Okay? Golden Tate was 1. But Eric Ebron targeted 7 times. At least 3 drops. Played like crap. That's a problem. But the offense, at times, able to move the football despite missing their left tackle, Taylor Decker, their left guard, Graham Glasgow, and their starting center, Travis Swanson, because Glasgow moved to center. Those are 3 pretty important parts. I told you earlier in a podcast how important it was for Travis Swanson to be quarterbacking, no pun intended, that offensive line. That last year people talked about Matt Stafford's injured finger, and for good reason, but I said, remember, Travis Swanson played 12 games last year. They missed him desperately in the 4 he missed. So you lose those 3 guys, that's vital. That's really hard to replace. And then Ziggy Ansah was just a shadow of what he was the week before because he wasn't healthy. You lose Anthony Zettel for a period of time during the game. There was no Jared Davis, your starting middle linebacker. You're playing with Paul Warlow and Reeves-Maben, Jalen Reeves-Maben, a rookie out of Tennessee who had all kinds of problems. You're without your starting safety in Tavon Wilson, although I think Miles Killebrew is just as good, if not better. Not making excuses, just giving you the scenario. That's a lot to overcome for one team. Other teams have had to do it too. To that extent, I don't know. But every team's going to have to play through injuries through an NFL season. So it's not an excuse. I'm just giving you an idea of what they fought through. And they were right there. Now, I know what the rule is. And I get it. I don't like the 10-second runoff. I've never liked the 10-second runoff because basically what the NFL is saying is our referees, and I think they're very good. So this is not a shot at them. I think they're very good. What they do is very difficult. And more oftentimes than not, they get it right. This is really hard. You and I look at it in an instant replay. We look at it in slow motion. And we can pause it and then slowly crawl it forward or backward and say, see? Try doing it in real time where the game is really fast. I couldn't do it. I'm free to admit that. I could not do it. But what the NFL basically says is our referees either made a mistake or don't know. So let's pause the game. Let's go up and review it. And if, in this case, we're wrong, it's your fault. That sucks. That's borderline unfair. The referees are saying, touchdown, wait, timeout, let's check, pause the clock, even though the Lions could easily right there take it, spike it, stop the clock themselves. They could do that. Remember, last year in Minnesota, they traveled 27 yards in 7 seconds. Don't tell me they couldn't go a couple of feet and spike the ball to get a 4th down. So anyway, the NFL is telling them, we could be wrong here. We're going to pause the clock. We're going to go under the hood on the iPad. And if we are wrong, we're going to penalize you. Is that competition? Is that fairness? Hell no. And I would say this either way. We can debate on whether or not you believe Golden Tate was down. Was he down by contact? He appeared to be hit on the foot, the leg, the back leg, as he was catching the football. And then we can argue on whether or not he actually was down when the ball crossed the goal line, whether his knee touched or was it his elbow that touched. Was it because of contact? Was the ball crossing the goal line? Did it hit the white stripe? If it did, that it's a touchdown? We can debate that all we want. My frustration is, and it has always been with this rule, the referee cannot tell. He stops the clock, and because he cannot tell, you know the game is over. It's over because of the 10-second runoff, or it's over because, 8 seconds left. I doubt Atlanta's doing anything with it. Although we've seen that before, I guess, with Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers and so on and so forth. It's a crappy way to lose, especially in a game like that, where you had two teams slugging it out who are, one is very good, the other one is on the rise. When healthy, Detroit. Now, sure, it might change if this were at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which is the brand new facility for the Atlanta Falcons. It may be different there. I don't know. Who cares? All we know is where they played this time. Atlanta's really good. Detroit has closed the gap a little bit in the NFC. And I think, for the most part, you could leave saying, you know what? I'm not ashamed to say I'm a Lions fan. After 3 weeks of the NFL, and there's been times after 3 weeks, you've shaken your head, and you said, I'm out. And you said, I can't believe this team is my team. And I hate this team, and it's same old Lions and so on and so forth. That's nowhere near the situation with this team now. This team is good. And they're better, quite honestly, than I thought they would be. Because I wasn't sure they could put pressure on the quarterback. And I would like to see more, but they did sack Matt Ryan a couple of times. I didn't think this team would be able to run the ball. Well, last week it did. This week, as in 2 weeks ago against the Giants, it did. Last week, as in yesterday against the Falcons, it struggled yet again. I mean, if you think about it, the longest run came on Matt Stafford's 11-yard scamper. And I think he was hurt a little bit because of that run. I think he got hit in the arm, and I think it affected his throwing. It's nice to know that you can wake up the next day and say, okay, not every conversation, not every phone call, not every text, not every tweet, not every email, not every conversation is going to center around your quarterback. Because it shouldn't. After going 25 of 45 for 264 yards and a touchdown. It'll be a hell of a challenge next week. Because they're going to face perhaps the best defense they face all season long next week when they go into Minnesota. And they play Anthony Barr and Eric Kendricks and Harrison Smith and Xavier Rhodes and guys like that. A team really good. A team who just opened up a can on Tampa with Case Keenum throwing for 369 yards and 3 touchdowns. Last year, we bitched and moaned and complained and said, oh, my God, I can't believe Detroit lost to Case Keenum or allowed Case Keenum to do what he did. Remember that? Yeah. They should be doing the same thing in Tampa, right? Because so many fans, not all you, so many fans would constantly complain to me. I'd rather have Jameis Winston. And I think Jameis Winston's going to be a really good quarterback, by the way. I do. Didn't look good yesterday. I'd rather have this guy. Look up that guy you wanted and tell me how he played. Nothing special, right? But these are games that can come back to haunt you late in the season. They can. They can come back and haunt you because Atlanta, they're probably going to win their division, but that's home field advantage if you win yours. And don't shake your head and say they have no chance to win their division. Bullcrap. Did you watch Green Bay last night? Did you watch Green Bay play Cincinnati in what was a beatable team? A pick six by Aaron Rodgers, but he still shook it off and came back and won. People talking about the toughness of Aaron Rodgers. If that's a local guy doing that, you're not saying he's tough. You're saying he's lucky. They needed double overtime, was it? Or was it, I should say overtime. They needed overtime to beat Cincinnati. They got the field goal right away. It was a hell of a win for Green Bay. But they were on the cusp of losing. They were down big early on, 21-7, to a team that many people feel isn't very good, or at least is underachieving. I have to say at least they were underachieving. Don't say that you can't win this division, because the Lions are in that mix with Minnesota and Green Bay. So the loss to Atlanta is a big loss. A, it's a home game. B, it's a conference game, which means it has a rippling effect, the possibility of having some type of playoff implication. And you and I both know one of our goals going into every NFL season as Lions fans is to try and get a home playoff game. You'd like to get that, right? Shep, Shower, and Shave brought to you by Northwestern Tech and brought to you by Nate Knopf Designs and Hungry Howie's as well. I'm not going to, I'll tell you what made it worse, by the way. The Dean Blandino, remember? Former NFL officiating chief. He's now working for Fox as an analyst. Yeah, real comfortable. Love watching Dean Blandino and Mike Pereira. Neither one comfortable on television. But for him to say, and this is what he said, quote, to recap in Detroit, ruling on the field was a touchdown which stops the clock. After review, tape was short, which would have kept the clock running. This carries a 10-second runoff. Had the call on the field been correct initially, the clock would have run out. That's the spirit of the rule. No, the clock necessarily would not have run out. If they mark him down short, Detroit hustles to the line of scrimmage and possibly stops the clock by spiking it. Because that was a third down play, right? Or if they can't spike it, no, it's a third down play, so they would have had to quickly run a fourth down play is what they would have done. Oh, and I know here's the other thing that a lot of people will be talking about. I would have run it. No, you wouldn't have. You would not have run the ball. First of all, again, Detroit ran for 71 yards. 71. That's number one. Number two, because they don't have Dwayne Washington. Number two, when you say I would have run it, I want you to picture this for a second. You struggled to run the football all day. You've got three guys out of position, or three starters not in there on your offensive line. Everybody knows you're a predominantly right-handed team with Rick Wagner and TJ Lang. I know you spent a lot of money on them in the offseason. Wagner, the highest-paid right tackle. TJ Lang, a big-time contract as well. You would probably say to yourself, I paid all this money for these guys. Let them do their job. I want you to think about this. You run the ball. You get clogged up. You don't make it. Atlanta sits on Amir Abdullah, sits on Zach Zenner, sits on Theo Riddick, whoever it may be, okay? They're sitting on him a little bit. And the clock's winding down. What are you saying? What are you screaming at the television set? I want you to think about that for a second. I know exactly what you'd be saying. How the hell can you run the football when you haven't been able to run it all day long? How the hell can you do that when you don't have any timeouts left? How the hell can you do that with the highest paid player in football history under center? That's not my complaint, okay? My complaint, because remember, on 1st and goal, Detroit's got 19 seconds left. Stafford throws to Riddick, and it's incomplete. On 2nd and goal, You got 15 seconds left. Stafford throws an incomplete pass to Kenny Galladay across the middle. So there were 12 seconds left. When he connects with Golden Tate, there was 8 seconds left. Don't tell me that you're going to run the football on first down, because that leaves you with probably one play rather than two if you don't make it. It's easy to sit back and say, I'd run it here, because the first one was incomplete, and the second one was incomplete, and the third one was short. But thank God you're not the head coach. You've got to throw it. Here's my complaint. And I thought this was interesting because I was listening last night to, or in the afternoon, on a CBS broadcast. Jim Nantz was calling the game, and Tony Romo was the analyst of the Green Bay-Cincinnati game. And Tony Romo said, when he was in Dallas, they did a study of why or what makes certain football teams successful in the red zone. And quite honestly, Detroit's been really successful in the red zone. Going into the game against Atlanta, they were 5 for 5 in red zone touchdowns, which is really impressive. And now, yesterday they settled for a field goal on one of the red zones. That hurt. I knew that would come back and haunt them. And then, of course, the last play. But Romo said the thing that makes successful teams, winning teams, so successful in the red zone is the ability for quarterback movement. And that doesn't mean my quarterback's going to run per se. It means what you do with the quarterback. And what surprised me for Detroit yesterday, and it's been a knock for me on Jim Bob Cooter for a long time. I've been consistent with this. I'd like to see quarterbacks who can move, not necessarily run. I'm not talking about only Deshaun Watson, Cam Newton, Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota, Aaron Rodgers. I'm not talking about just them. I'm talking about guys who can move their feet, get outside the pocket, throw outside the pocket, and be accurate outside the pocket. I like an RPO. That's a run-pass option. Now, sometimes a run-pass option is an inside fake, and you're reading a safety or a linebacker. Sometimes it may be a defensive end. Try to get them to crash. Try to commit them to commit. If a safety comes up in the box, you're reading him a lot of times. Defensive end, you want to see if he crashes. If he crashes, you pull it, and then you throw. If he stays wide, then maybe you give it. It depends on the read of the quarterback. But a run-pass option is also rolling the pocket. And that's what I tweeted yesterday. Roll the pocket. Matt Stafford can move. He's not super fast. You don't have to be. He can move, and he can throw on the move. Give him the option on a roll to read the defense while you're rolling. And a pump fake to freeze a backer or a safety, and the opportunity to run for the corner of the end zone. You can always throw it away. Now, I know what it does. It cuts the field in half for you, which is a negative. Him rolling to his right pretty much takes away the left side of the field. Not always. Look what Deshaun Watson did yesterday. He threw back across the green. Not always. Look what Matt Ryan did yesterday. He threw across the green. You remember one of the Atlanta touchdowns, do you not? I hope so, because when you saw Matt Ryan throw one of his touchdowns, one to Mohamed Sanu, the other one went to Taylor Gabriel, and that was thrown across the green. But if you allow Matt Stafford to roll the pocket, let's just say on one of those last 3 plays, roll the pocket to the right, he's got a chance not just to find a guy in the end zone, but to run it in as well. And I know some people are a little leery because, what if he takes a sack there? That's where you rely on Matt Stafford to say, you know what, I got to be smart with this. If I see a guy coming, I need to throw it away. I'm not asking you to go naked boot. I'm not asking you to play action to the left, roll to your right without seeing. I'm asking you to take the ball out of the shotgun, roll the pocket to the right, and find somebody. Back corner, short corner, cross the middle, run it. And a lot of times, when a quarterback starts to make a move toward the line of scrimmage, it forces the defense to commit. I'm going to stay back, thus Stafford might run it in, or I'm going to charge and get to the quarterback allowing Stafford then to throw to a receiver. That's what I'd like to see more of. Shep Shower and Shave brought to you by Northwestern Tech. Go to their website, northwesterntech.edu, or call them 248-358-4006. Northwestern Tech is the HVAC school that gets you trained, certified, and into the field in only 10 and a half months. We're brought to you by Nate Noth Designs. Find his work on Instagram or on Facebook. And by Hungry Howie's, the Michigan-based pizza company known as the original flavored crust pizza. They've got the best fundraiser called Dough Raiser. Go to doughraiser.com. We have a championship team with a take that back. We have a championship element as part of one of the teams in this area. And it's the 8th-ranked Michigan Wolverines, who are 4-0 and on a bye this week. It's a team that may not be or is not as good as certain teams in the country, like Alabama or Clemson, but they do have a championship element. And that championship element is their defense. Their defense is among the best in the country in a number of different categories. But what they did against Purdue, the adjustments that Don Brown made in West Lafayette were incredible. Now, the big debate in Ann Arbor today is about the quarterback spot. Wilton Spade, who was injured in the first quarter, he was sacked by Marcus Bailey. Spade had to go to a nearby hospital, I guess, because there was no x-ray ability on site. How that's possible, I don't know. John O'Korn comes in. He goes 5 for 5, leads them to a 7-0 lead, throws a 12-yard touchdown pass to Zach Gentry. For the day, finishes 18 to 26, 270 yards, a touchdown and a pick. Not bad, right? But didn't do anything that made me go, oh, my God, this guy's clearly better. This is not a Matt Stafford, Dante Culpepper situation that makes me go, oh, my God, this guy's so much better. Now, I think the guy's mobile. I think he's pretty good. I don't think either one of them are all Big Ten material, but I think he's pretty damn good. And it's a good competition, and it's good to have that. The offense in general, though, keep in mind, did have all kinds of problems. Punted 5 times in the first half, okay? Averaged under 4 yards per play in the first half. But it's more about what this team's defense did. You hold a Big Ten team, I don't care who it is, to 10 yards and a half. It's unbelievable. It's a team that had 179 yards in the first half and then held them to just 10 yards in the second half. Held them to 1 first down. That says an awful lot about this team's ability, this team's adjustments, its skill set, and as I said last week, their speed. Defensive speed, the thing that so many people admire about the SEC all the time, is what? Their speed. Here's where speed shows up the most. Speed shows up on special teams and on defense. And that team had to go into a locker room where there was no air conditioning. And not that that's a huge deal, but when you're playing in 90-degree heat, it can make a massive difference. And yet they came out and they were the team, as Jeff Brom of Purdue, their new head coach, who I think is really good, said, they wore us down. They beat us up. That was an incredible performance. To go, 2.5 yards per play in the second half, if at all, at one point, right? I believe so. They ran 18 plays for a total of 10 yards in the second half. That's what Michigan's defense did to Purdue. They're among the best in the country in sacks. They're among the best in the country in rushing yards per game allowed. They have got speed at every single level. Chase Winovich named Big Ten Defensive Player of the Week for Michigan because of his efforts. He's incredibly fast. He had 6 tackles. He had 4 tackles for a loss. He had 3 sacks. He's got 6 sacks on the year now. And that defense is among the best in so many different categories and number 2 overall. That is championship level. And now they get 2 weeks to prep for an MSU team that I overrated. I overrated them. I thought Michigan State was better than a lot of people were saying after the first couple of weeks, because I thought they beat a good Western Michigan team. I didn't think Notre Dame was all that good. I know they played Georgia tough, and Georgia's 11th in the country, I believe. But I didn't think Michigan State would struggle as much. Of course, I didn't account for the turnovers, struggle as much against the Irish as they did, but they did. So they've got some deep-rooted issues. And Michigan gets them at home. And that game, even though it's a rivalry game, that game might be a blowout in favor of U of M. The speed that Michigan displays on the defensive side of the ball is what makes things different. For me, anyway. It's unbelievable how quickly they have been able to change. When you see that team play, they look like, and I hate to give a ton of love to the SEC all the time, but in the Midwest, that's what we hear about all the time, isn't it? We hear about it from Paul Feinbaum on ESPN and everything else. We hear about how great the SEC is and how dominant they become. And why is that? It's because of their speed. Well, now you look at this team, you look at this Michigan squad, and you can see that defensively they are there. Devin Bush, Mike McCray, although I don't think McCray's one of those guys who possesses great speed. And I think it does help to move guys. You know, they did this with Jabril Peppers last year. And you do it with Hudson and Tyree Cannell, and you move them into that monster spot or whatever. Hell, Mo Hurst in the middle doesn't get nearly enough love. But he's going to be a hell of a pro. Rashawn Gary on the edge and Winovich on the other. Incredible speed. Incredible burst from those guys. And then you look at that defensive backfield, so many interchangeable parts. They're really impressive. I mean, really impressive. And I look forward to watching them. And I would hope many people would. I mean, I can get it if you're not a Michigan fan, but, I mean, just from a college football standpoint, just from watching, you look at a team and you go, man, I would like my team to be like that. Defensively, I'm talking about defense here, and special teams too. 2 of the 3 areas, Michigan's got it down. Michigan State in 2 weeks, then at Indiana, and then at Penn State. The big game on the whole schedule before they, get to Ohio State. Although I guess going to Madison will be big as well. All right, we're brought to you by Hungry Howie's. We're brought to you by Northwestern Tech, and Shep Shower and Shave is brought to you by Nate Knopf Designs. Brad Ausmus was fired. This is a huge, if you think about it, huge sports weekend. And you get the Brad Ausmus. You can say he was fired. You can say he was let go. His contract isn't being renewed. That was the big story of the day on Friday. Forget about the Tigers allowing double-digit runs in back-to-back games against the Twins. 3 out of 4. Detroit's allowed 10 runs or more 9 times since September 1st. It's pretty embarrassing. But Brad Ausmus' contract was not renewed on Friday. And then Saturday you get the Michigan and the Michigan State game. Sunday you get the Lions and how that ends. Obviously Friday there was all kinds of ruckus about the president's ridiculous comments too. Although I don't think the NFL necessarily handles it as well as it should either. I mean, I wish more people would have shown Alejandro Villanueva, who emerged from Soldier Field and the locker room to put his hand over his heart. A guy who spent, 3 tours in Afghanistan. I thought David DeCastro of the Pittsburgh Steelers said it as well as any athlete could have. He said, I wish there was a different way to do this thing. We've got some people who look at the national anthem as patriotism, soldiers, all the things that it means to them, and obviously people are upset, and I understand that, he said. He said, I just wish both sides understood what they want the right thing to do, but doing it through the national anthem, I wish there was a different way. I agree, 100%. I understand the message that many athletes are trying to convey, and I can agree with that message. Doing it the way they're doing it, I disagree with. And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. I disagree with the way the president went about his business and saying what he said. I thought that was ill-conceived because there's a lot of NFL players who do stand. Painting people with a broad brush is really dangerous and not fair. I do wonder why the NFL, and I believe it's in their bylaws, that you're supposed to be out on the field with your helmet in your left hand with your hand over your heart for the national anthem. Otherwise, you could be fined. But there will be no fines for the Pittsburgh Steelers or any team that stays in. There's been no fines for any athlete who has taken a knee or anyone who has sat on the bench. And yet they'll fine a player $5,000 for wearing cleats to honor 9/11. They'll fine a player for wearing pink regarding breast cancer. See, here's what gets lost. What gets lost in this discussion, the president easily forgets all the things that the NFL does for veterans. Now, it's very hypocritical because, there's been a lot said about bringing out members of the military. They're getting a standing ovation at NFL stadiums. I think that's awesome, but there was belief that the NFL actually had the military pay to have that done. But they do celebrate and do quite a bit to honor veterans and honor breast cancer and things of that nature. In other words, honor the do-gooders. They should. I'm not going to give them a pat on the back for doing that. They should be doing that. But on the other hand, the NFL has let this fester and go on too long. Find a different way where you're not upsetting people. I tell you what, instead of doing it on a fan's time, since there are a lot of veterans in the stadium that find it offensive, there are some who don't mind it, but there are many who find it offensive, and people in general who are tired of it, march in something. Take the time out of your day, instead of taking ours, and stand by marching for something. There's nothing wrong with protesting. It's part of the fabric of this country. Do you not believe there's a time and place to do it? The thing that has frustrated me about the president's actions is this. I believe sports has been a time where I can get away from all the political infighting. I get tired of it. I'm sick and tired of Republicans and Democrats fighting. I'd like it to be Americans trying to do what's best for Americans. And I don't trust any politician. And they've brought that on themselves. But I don't trust athletes either, or entertainers. I think everybody's got their agendas. I find it hilarious when people say, I'm going to protest this and I'm not going to watch this anymore. Bull crap. I think you're going to watch. Doesn't mean you can be necessarily satisfied or happy or respectful of the people who are out there because of them disrespecting what you stand for either. I think there's a lot of football players who do a lot of good. A lot. There's a lot of athletes that do a lot of good. But they're constantly telling the president to stay in his lane. They have no problem. LeBron James has no problem. Greg Popovich has no problem expressing what they feel should be done. But they're not staying in their lane. I heard somebody say yesterday, protesting doesn't do any good with fans saying, I'm not going to the game and all this other stuff. Well, if it doesn't do any good, then why are football players doing it? At some point, how Ideally, you'd love the commander-in-chief to bring in members of the football union. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's Terrell Suggs, Alejandro Villanueva. Villanueva would be one of the guys I would want in there. Bring him in. Sit him down and talk to him. You can bring people in from Harley-Davidson. You can bring people in from all kinds of walks of life to talk to them. How about bringing them in and saying, look, I don't like the way this is going, man. I think it makes your league look bad. I think it makes you look bad. Makes the United States look bad. Think about this. They were playing in London on Sunday morning. Baltimore and Jacksonville. They knelt for the national anthem, but stood for God Bless the Queen. That's screwed up, man. What's that saying about our country? There's a lot of divisiveness taking place. The president should be above it. He's dividing it. But you know what? So are a lot of athletes. So are a lot of entertainers. So are a lot of members of the media. It's really too bad. Didn't necessarily want to do that in a whole lot, but I do want to say this. Brad Ausmus not coming back with the Detroit Tigers is the right thing to do. It's time to move on. I thought he handled it exceptionally well. I thought the way he goes about his business by saying, I understand it. I think this team needs a new voice. That he actually told Al Avila that he'd like to finish the season because he's getting paid to do a job. He wants to do that job. He wants to complete the deal. And he thinks a fresh start is important. More than just managerial reasons. And I think he's right. I think the biggest issue Brad Ausmus faced in his tenure in Detroit, and he had 2 good seasons and 2 bad ones. And you can complain all you want about certain mistakes that he's made. I've complained about him too. But I think young players responded to him. I talked to young players about it. I don't care if it's James McCann, Dixon Machado, Nick Castellanos. Young guys responded to him. His issue was giving the veterans too much power, too much of a say, and backing them too frequently. I felt like that was his biggest problem as the manager of this baseball team. I think they had to move on, no question. I know why you're pissed off at him. You're pissed off because in the very first year, when he replaced Jim Leland, they won the division. They played Baltimore. We felt like they were a better team. I did. We felt like they had a better pitching staff. I did. And they got swept. Well, get this. And I'm not comparing them because I think Jim Leland's a far better manager than Brad Ausmus will ever be. But I thought Detroit was a better team in 2006 than the St. Louis Cardinals, too, and they got beat by 5 games. In 5 games, they were beaten. Did we blame Jim Leland? No, we did not. They couldn't field bunts. They couldn't field ground balls. They were throwing wide to various bases. People blame players. They wouldn't blame Jim Leland. I don't care what manager was in charge of the Detroit Tigers in 2017. They weren't going to win many more games than they've won right now. I got in this debate with somebody on Friday, and here's what I asked them. How many games do you feel like a manager makes a difference? Just answer the question. They said 5 was their answer. 5. I said, so in other words, this team is a 67-win team right now. 67. Guess what? They'd be second to last in the Central instead of last in the Central. I've said this ad nauseum, and I know you've heard it before on a podcast, maybe when you listen to my radio show too. Ask yourself, be honest with yourself. I know you don't like him, and that's okay, because there's a lot of coaches, and there's a lot of managers, and a lot of players you may not like. It's hard to change our minds in sports, but I want you to ask yourself this question. Be honest. I'm going to ask you 5 questions, and I want you to answer them I'll answer them too, but I want you to think long and hard about this. Ready? Before the season began, Detroit's defense, above average, average, or below average? I thought it would be below average. What do you think? Okay. Detroit's base running, above average, average, or below average? I think it would be below average. What do you think? Okay. Detroit's starting pitching, above average, average, or below average? I thought it would be above average. I thought Verlander, I thought Fulmer for sure good. I thought Zimmerman would bounce back a little bit, and I thought you'd get one decent season out of either Norris or Boyd. Now, maybe that's average, but I thought it would be slightly above average. What do you think? Okay, their relief pitching, above average, average, or below average? I thought it would be below average. And finally, Detroit's offense. Did you think it would be above average, average, or below average? I thought it would be above average. I thought Upton, J.D. Martinez, I didn't expect much from Jacoby Jones, Castellanos, Kinsler, Cabrera, Victor Martinez. I thought they'd be above average. What do you think? So I have 3 below averages and 2 above average, and really the starting pitching really should be more average. I said 76 wins to start the year. This isn't a huge surprise to me. 62 wins is a little surprising. I thought they might be a little bit closer to a team like Kansas City. But I didn't figure that Miguel Cabrera would have 2 herniated discs, that Victor Martinez would look 75, Ian Kinsler would have his worst season, J.D. Martinez would be hurt yet again. That's what we've gotten. Brad Ausmus aside, how many managers, be honest here, how many managers are winning with Jeimer Candelario, Jose Iglesias, Ian Kinsler, John Hicks, on a regular basis? I like Mikey Montauk and Alex Presley. They've shown me something this year. How many managers are winning with this team? And it's probably not even fair to bring up those guys. What you should be bringing up are the guys in the bullpen and really the pitching, because the pitching's the biggest issue. Now, granted, the offensive season that Kinsler and Victor Martinez and Miguel Cabrera just got awful. But how many teams are winning, or how many managers are winning with Daniel Stumpf and Warwick Saupold and Drew Verhagen and Artie Lewicki and Jeff Farrell and Chad Bell and Zach Reiniger? I mean, come on, man. Let's be real. But the move is the right one. So now where does this team go? Originally, maybe an Omar Vizquel, a Dave Martinez, who has paid his dues and is, I think, would be a good fit here. Either one of those guys, I think, would be a good fit. I really do. I did an interview the other day. Somebody was complaining, saying, how about Ron Gardenhire? And Ron Gardenhire has been on the bench with the Arizona Diamondbacks, and I think he's a good man. I like him. Ron Gardenhire was good in Minnesota when he won the division in 2002, 2003, and 2004. And he won it in 2009 and 2010. And you know what? He had some really good players. He had MVP candidates Joe Mauer and Justin Morneau. He had really good pitching. He had some really good players. When he didn't have very good players, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, he won 63, 66, 66, and 70 games. He was doing what the Detroit Tigers are doing now. Right now. That was him. 2011, he won 63 games, man. That's what the Tigers have 62 wins right now. Again, I like Ron Gardenhire. But there's a lot of managers who become a hell of a lot better when they've got good players. Ozzie Guillen in Miami. He won 69 games in 2012. This is the other guy that so many people are saying, this is the guy you got to have. When he had John Buck and Emilio Bonifacio, they weren't very good. Okay? Greg Dobbs, for crying out loud. He won under 70 games with Carlos Lee and Jose Reyes and Hanley Ramirez and Logan Morrison. And Giancarlo Stanton. Stanton was only 22 at the time. But he still hit 37 bombs. That was their team. And he won 69 games. That was a year after he was under 500 for Chicago. But see, he won a World Series in 2005? Everybody thought, this guy's the best. Absolutely the best. And they conveniently forget that in 2007, they won 72 games. Or 2009, they won under 80 games. 2011, under 80 games. 2012, under 70 games. My point is, it helps to have talent. I don't know who they're going to hire next. Originally, I thought it'd be a good idea to hire a guy who can learn with this team. And then I read, well, you got to have some experience. What experienced manager, I suppose Guillen, because he wants to get back into it, Gardenhire, because they want to get back into it. I was talking to Bert Blyleven the other day. I called the Tigers game on radio Saturday, and I asked Bert Blyleven about Ron Gardenhire. He thinks, yes, he wants to get back into it. I said, would he really want a team like this? He goes, yeah, this would be tough. That's from a Hall of Fame pitcher, Bert Blyleven, who does the television broadcast for the Minnesota Twins. He goes, that would be really tough. It'd be really hard because this team has a long way to go. This is a tough rebuild that you guys are about to go through. So keep that in mind. That you're going to have to deal with a guy who you may not necessarily agree with. They're going to scour. They're going to talk to a lot of guys. Ron Washington, Ron Gardenhire, Ozzie Guillen, a lot of up-and-comers and so on and so forth. You know, as I mentioned, Dave Martinez, really good because he's picked the brain of Joe Madden for a long time. That's fine. That's what they should do. But do you really think that a guy who's won a world championship like Ozzie Guillen wants to come to a team that's got this much of a rebuild? This is a tough... The next guy is going to be a bridge guy. And just about everybody probably knows that. Do you really think this is the situation that would be best for him? The only reason it's the situation that would be best for him is because of what? Just because he wants to get back into it. And he has said that. He said, do I want to manage in the big leagues again? Yes. I'd say 90% of me is yes, 10% is no. I want to play golf instead of being at the ballpark dealing with stuff. Wow. You want a guy like that? Who's 90% in instead of 100% in? Not me. Shep Shower and Shave brought to you by Hungry Howie's, the Michigan-based pizza company known as the original flavored crust pizza. They also have the best fundraiser around called Dough Raiser. Go to doughraiser.com for your sports group or your school group to raise money. We're brought to you by Nate Knopf Designs. Find his work on Instagram or on Facebook. And we're brought to you by Northwestern Tech. HVAC is all they teach. They have perfected their hands-on program for over 38 years. And they can get you into the field, trained and certified in 10.5 months. Northwestern Tech is the HVAC school that works. Find them on their website, northwesterntech.edu. Thanks for listening to Shep Shower and Shave. We'll be back later in the week for another edition of our podcast.